Hello, everyone. I'd like to go over the review questions for Judith Jarvis Thompson's defense of abortion. Number one, at the beginning of her essay, Thompson says, I am inclined to think also that we shall probably have to agree that the fetus, I'm sorry for the typo there, that the fetus has already become a person well before birth. Given this admission, how can her essay be a defense of abortion? Well, it's really fairly complicated. We shall probably have to agree that the fetus has become a person before birth. It's not clear what Thompson's actual belief is with regard to this issue, but she doesn't think that we are able to draw a line that would enable us to say when the fetus actually becomes a person. But her admission there is that it probably is before birth. It really doesn't matter what she believes there. It doesn't even matter what's true. That's kind of what's interesting about this essay is that she grants, for the sake of the argument, that not only does the fetus become a person well before birth, but she grants for the sake of argument that the fetus is a person from the moment of conception, that is, from the moment when the sperm fertilizes the egg within a woman's body. And that is purely for the sake of argument. And what that highlights, that really points up, is that the personhood of the fetus, whether the fetus is a full-blown person or full-blown human being, is not really central to her argument. She grants that it is, and says, despite this, you can still defend abortion, and that is because the fetus, although she says, and the answer to number two is yes, there is a right to life. Even if we grant that the fetus, from the moment of conception, is a person, and so has all the rights of a person, and so has the right to life, which she says is true, that the right to life does not, for any of us, our right to life does not grant us the right to access anything and everything we might need to live. That is one of the central points of the essay. And the right to life is not the right to, again, to anything that we might need to live under any circumstances. It is not even the right not to be killed. It is the right not to be killed unjustly, which is the key point, perhaps, of the essay, is that you and I have the right to life. And presumably that means we have the right, at the very least, not to be killed. But it's not really true. I mean, if we think about the exceptions to that, we can be killed in self-defense. We can be killed, perhaps, in terms of a judicial punishment for the worst crimes. Of course, that's very controversial. We have the right not to be killed unjustly. So just because the fetus is a person does not necessarily imply that the fetus has a right either to the use of the woman's body or that the fetus has a right not to be killed. The fetus has a right not to be killed unjustly. So what has to be determined is whether abortion is unjust killing. So number two, does Thompson think there is a right to life? She certainly does. But that right is not unlimited. It is limited to not being killed unjustly, and the right to life does not give you access to everything that you might need to live. It gives you access to what you have a right to. Number three, if keeping the violinist who is hooked up to you alive will kill you, do you have the right to unhook him? Would it be murder? Well, that's put in the terms of just a general question, but looking at Thomson, she firmly believes that we would have the right to unhook him and that it would not be murder. Murder would be unjust killing. Murder would be taking somebody's life in circumstances that you actually did a wrong by taking that person's life. But if you unhook the violinist, you would not be murdering him. You would be doing something that results in his death, for sure. But you have the right to unhook him. Why? Because the violinist does not have the right of access to your body. The violinist has the right to life. You have the right to life. You find yourself, you wake up and you are hooked up to him, and that you know that he will die if he doesn't have access to your body. That is, he will die if you unhook yourself from him. Do you have the right to do it? Yes, you do, because he never had the right and still doesn't have the right of access to your body. That is something that you would have to grant him in order for him to have that right. So it would not be murder. Number 4, what significance does Thompson give to the fact that, quote, the mother owns the house? This is the another imaginative scenario where you're stuck in a room or house with an expanding baby. And you have the choice of either letting the baby continue to expand and crushing you in your house or killing it. And the, 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 it's in that situation, the fact that the mother owns the house, right? That is, if it's between her and the expanding baby, the fact that that it is the mother's house means that the mother has the right to the house and the baby doesn't. So this has obvious implications for abortion. Number 5, if the only thing that can save my life is a visit from Henry Fonda, and this is another fanciful scenario, it's full of this essay is full of these incredibly imaginative hypotheticals. If the only thing that can save my life is a visit from Henry Fonda, where he puts his hand on my fevered brow and cures my illness, do I have a right to a visit from him? Absolutely not, says Thompson. It would be very nice if Henry Fonda would come and visit, if he knew that the only thing that could save you was the touch of his hand on your fevered brow. But he cannot be compelled to do it. He does not. He does not have an obligation to come and visit you. It may, under certain circumstances, be the only morally decent thing to do, she said, moral decency, for him to come visit. But he cannot be obliged to come visit you because you do not have a right to that visit from him. Number 6, according to Thompson, does killing someone necessarily violate their right to life? This goes back to first 2 questions. The answer to that is no, which is surprising. I mean, I guess we normally think of the right to life, at least meaning the right not to be killed. But under Thompson's way of thinking of it, because the right to life is the right not to be killed unjustly, then no, killing someone does not necessarily violate the right to life. You would have to kill someone unjustly to violate their right to life. Again, we can think of killing in war. 2 soldiers are on the battlefield and one fires at another during a battle and kills them. They have killed them. But have they violated their right to life? Most people would say no. If someone is attacking you with an axe and you kill them in self-defense, most people would say you haven't violated the right to life. That is, there are exceptions. The right to life does not entail the right not to be killed in any circumstance. Number 7, what does Thompson have to say about the claim that the unborn child has a right to the use of the mother's body? Well, I think that it's a tough question. I haven't looked at this in a while. That is a very tough question. I think that she would grant that in some cases, the unborn child does have a right to the use of the mother's body. That is, I think that this is a fairly open-ended essay in terms of abortions that leaves the that is, leaves open the possibility that some abortions are in fact unjust. And the unjust abortions would be the abortions in which the unborn child does indeed have a right to the use of the mother's body. So, generally speaking, the unborn child does not have a right to the use of the mother's body, I think. But under circumstances in which it could be said that the mother implicitly or explicitly gave that right to the unborn child, then you can say that the unborn child does. Now, I don't think she's very clear about what those circumstances would be. This, this might relate to the box of chocolates example that she gives. If somebody gives to two brothers a box of chocolates in common, says share them, and then the the older brother just eats them all, then the older brother has done an injustice to his younger brother. But if somebody gives a box of chocolates just to the older brother and he eats them all and doesn't share with the younger brother, then he has not done the younger brother an injustice, because in the former case, the younger brother had a joint right to the box of chocolates with the older brother. So, for an abortion to be unjust, the unborn child would have to have a right to the use of the mother's body. So, really, that would be, that would have to be worked out, just what the circumstances were under which that right could be said to be given. Number 8, what is the difference between indecent and unjust? Well, that's a good question. I would say that injustice, the way that Thompson is conceiving of it, is when you violate somebody's right. That is, going back to the box of chocolates, if the box of chocolates are given to the two brothers in common and one brother just eats them all, that's unjust, because the older brother, or the brother who eats them all, has violated the right of the other brother to have the box of chocolates. If the chocolates are given to one brother and he just eats them all in front of his younger brother and makes his younger brother cry when he could have shared easily, that could be characterized as indecent, because it's just mean. It's, decency requires that you share a little bit. But it's not unjust, because there's no violation of rights. If I'm dying in a room with Henry Fonda in the room, and Henry Fonda knows that all he needs to do is to walk across the room and put his hand on my brow to save me, and he doesn't do it, that would be indecent. Not being willing to make that minimal effort. But it wouldn't be unjust, because I do not have a right to his aid. That, I think, is maybe those are illustrations of, I think, that what she has in mind in this distinction. Number 9, what are the different varieties of Samaritan that Thompson describes? That's a good question. I haven't looked at the essay in a couple weeks. Well, there's a splendid Samaritan, and that's the person who makes big sacrifices that they're not obliged to do. A splendid Samaritan would be somebody who, okay, they find themselves hooked up to the famous violinist without their consent. They're told that they would have to remain in bed hooked up for the next 9 months or 10 months or a year or whatever it is. And they go ahead and do it. That would be being a splendid Samaritan, I think. I think that's what she says. I think the other pole is the minimally decent Samaritan. And there might be a different phrasing of it. I'll look it up. But a minimally decent Samaritan would be somebody who would be willing to walk across the room to save somebody's life, or be willing to be hooked up to the famous violinist for 10 minutes to save his life. And it again, it does end in sort of unresolved way in certain respects, this essay, because she does say, well, if you're willing to be pregnant for an hour, maybe minimal decency would require you to do that, rather than have an abortion. But it's not absolutely clear. So I think she definitely says at one point that there's a level of decency below which we must not fall. Again, decency as opposed to justice. That is, there's a level of decency that we must maintain, even if not maintaining it would not mean that we're unjust. So it's a little bit subtle.